Hello, this is Kirill from forexboat.com and welcome back to the course on Forex trading. In today's tutorial, we will talk about the Forex calendar. So to find one of the best Forex calendars, you need to go to Google and type in Forex Factory calendar. And as you can see, it brings up a calendar here, and we're going to open up that page. Forex Factory is a forum for Forex traders, and they also provide news and other cool stuff. Here you've got a calendar for the week where you can change your time period here if you want to, but by default it's set to the current week. And as you can see, the week started with Sunday. That was the previous Sunday, November the 30th. And for every day, well, Sunday's not really the best day to look at, so we'll start off with Monday because that's actually a working day. So for every day, they've got the news that's due in the world, like for example, Spanish manufacturing PMI, or net lending to individuals M/M, or a monetary base Y/Y, and a cash rate, and all of these, they are specific to a certain country. So on the left here, it will tell you what currency pair is affected, and usually in 99% of the cases, it is actually the currency pair that is local or domestic to that country. So here you've got Australian dollar and a euro, the Swiss franc, British pound. As you can see, quite a lot of news is coming out there. And so the current time is actually shown at the top over here and over here as well. And here you've got the time when that news will be released in that same time zone. I'm pretty sure if you log in into their website, then you'll be able to change the time zone to your time zone. But by default, I think it's set to the New York or EST time zone. So you can play around with that. What else do we have here? You've got some details, so you can click on the detail if you want, and it'll bring up some information specific to that piece of news. So for example, the manufacturing PMI for Great Britain, you can read about it here, and you can understand that PMI stands for Purchasing Managers Index. You can see when the next release is, some notes, some very useful information, basically some related stories from financial reviews, the history of how it changed, and so on. Then you can just close that if you don't want to see it. And then finally, you've got the values over here, which are the most important part. So the first value is the actual. This is in fact what the value was when the news was released. Then you've got the forecast, and you got the previous value. So by reading this manufacturing PMI for Great Britain, we can see that the previous value was 53.3. The forecast for this time, for this Monday, was 53.1. But when the time came and the news was released, it was actually 53.5. And that's why it's highlighted in green, meaning that this outcome was much more favorable than expected. For traders, that means that apparently the economy is doing well, and the British pound is probably going to grow. You have to kind of also gauge how this news affects your currency, and that you can see here under usual effects. So if actual is greater than forecast, it's good for currency. So in this case, it was good for the British pound dollar. Also, you can see that this news is highlighted with a red factory icon, meaning that the impact is a high impact, and therefore if you put all of this together, the outcome was more favorable than the forecast. It's good for the currency, it's a high impact, so probably the British pound dollar experienced a increase in value at this point in time when this news was released. So if you see something that's red, let's find a red one that's high impacts. Here's another one. So the British pound construction PMI was released on Tuesday, and the outcome was less than the forecast, so 59.4 versus 61.1. If you expand this, you'll see here that the actual, if actual is greater than forecast, it's good for currency. In our case, actual is less than forecast, so meaning it's bad for the British pound dollar. and we can see a red icon here, meaning that it's a high impact piece of news, meaning that the British pound probably would have lost value. It's not always that case. Sometimes things happen that you don't expect, but in most cases it does stay in line with the recommendations that are given on Forex Factory. So we're just going to scroll down a bit lower, and I'll show you today's news. So here, because we're in Friday, December the 5th, you can see that right now the time's around 3 a.m. Actually, it's just past 3 a.m. It's 3:05. But I opened this page at 3 a.m. So at that time, this piece of news for the Swiss franc hadn't been released yet. And it says here foreign currency reserves. As you can see, the previous value was 460.4 billion. There's no expected value. Sometimes there's nothing that they can specify here. And in order to find out the current value, you just have to click this refresh button, because we are so close to the release of the news. So I'm just going to click it and see what will come up. And as you can see, that's the current value. It was literally released like 2 or 3 minutes ago into the world news. So you can probably find it on the website of the Associated Central Bank and so on. So their foreign currency reserves increased by $2 billion, which is probably a good thing. You can also check here, but once again, we don't have a forecast, so there's nothing to compare to. You can only compare to the previous value, and I don't really know if that's a very good thing, or it should have increased much more. So you'd have to find the forecast somehow yourself. As you can see, this news hasn't been released yet, and that's because the time hasn't come for it to be released. Also, something that we'll talk about in the further tutorials of this section. Today is the first Friday of December, and every first Friday of every month, the US releases non-farm employment change and unemployment rates for the month. And those are two major pieces of news. We'll talk about them in the future tutorial. I look forward to seeing you then, and until next time, happy trading.